Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We're moving further into the medieval period, and we encounter Morte DArthur. This is, as you can tell, one of the Arthurian legends. There's lots of other stories that are part of the Arthurian legends, and the author is listed as Sir Thomas Malory. However, it's important to remember that when we think about the term author in this context, this is the person who penned, right, who wrote down these stories, these legends that were part of the oral tradition. If you recall when we were with Beowulf, right, the anonymous author of that text was really the person who sat down and, dipped the quill pen into the ink and wrote it down on the parchment. So, therefore, we have to be sure to make a distinction between author and scribe. So it's better to think of Sir Thomas Malory as the scribe, the person who physically wrote these down, as opposed to authoring, like today we think about, someone like Stephen King being an author. In other words, he came up with that idea and as well as wrote it down. Okay. With Beowulf, remember, that was part of the oral tradition of, remember, the Anglo-Saxons. Here, with Morte DArthur, here's what's interesting. Everybody always associates the Arthurian legends with England, right? It's one of the hallmarks here. However, these are all French in origin. Yeah, it's true. How did they come to England? If you remember from the period overview, 1066, what happens in 1066? Right, this is when the Normans, who were all French, right, they invade, and this is where we have the Battle of Hastings. I always tell people the one date that you have to remember in English Lit is 1066. William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror comes to England from France, from Normandy, right? Battle of Hastings, boom, he's in. What does he bring with him? French language, French manners, French customs, and French literature. And so this is interesting. This is interesting. When we're starting the course, English Lit, what do we start with? We start with Beowulf, Germanic, Morte DArthur, the Arthurian legends, French. Well, the title itself isn't even English. Oh my goodness. So here's what's really funny. We still haven't had a true work of English literature because we're basically encountering works from the oral tradition. If you remember from the period overview as well, when we talked about the three estates of the Middle Ages, when we had the nobility, the clergy, and then us, everybody else, the peasants. In case you're curious, this is the vast minority of the populace. And they each had associated with a language, right? French and Latin, and then remember that sequence that we had with German coming over and then all that mixes together to give us English. So the commoners, the peasants, right, when they would encounter the nobility, they'd be speaking French. We'd be speaking English. You go to church, you hear Latin. This is just wild craziness, but it's true. When contemporary readers, when we read the Arthurian legends, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that we really don't believe, and that's okay. What this is called, this is an example of what we would call a romance. This is the type of literature it is. When we hear the word romance, we think about St. Valentine's Day and the Hallmark card, right? Little, oh. But that's not what we have here. What a romance is, it's a work of fantasy where we have magic, these events taking place that are unbelievable, right? For the period audience, that was part of the fun. Just like today when we go see a Star Wars movie. We want to see a different world. We know that it's not real. We're suspending our disbelief just to be part of the story. Remember, when we're with the nobility, they have the 3 L's. Their devotion to Lord as being God. The lowercase Lord would be the Lord of the manor, and then their lady. During this time, people would basically get married, not out of love, but as a way to cement their place in the social order, as well as for money. Not that people don't do that today, of course. And what we're going to see in Morte DArthur is what happens when courtly love goes wrong. What would happen when courtly love was practiced as it was intended to, you would have a knight, someone of the noble order, and he would attach himself to one of the ladies of the court. And it would be kind of a form of devotion, kind of a platonic love. It was not necessarily meant to be physical, although it did happen. And what we're going to see here is what goes wrong when this courtly love system is upset. We're going to have some good nights in Morte DArthur, and we're going to have some bad nights. One of the things to be on the lookout for is, are there differences in characteristics between the good nights and the bad nights? As well, what does the text value? And by that, we can add another word that we've seen before. Didactic. Remember that this period literature is meant to teach. It's a form of instruction. So it's another thing as you're going through the text, ask yourself, what is being taught to the period audience? This is an extended work. You have to give it some time to go through as you start to encounter all these different characters in Morte DArthur. Until we see each other again, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.